Welcome to the Wade Borth Podcast, where fresh thinking meets financial freedom. Each week, we explore ideas that challenge old habits and light the way to a stronger financial future. Let's get started.
Hello, and welcome back to the Wade Borth Podcast. Today, I have a frequent guest. I used to call him special guest, but I'm going to call him a frequent guest, David Zapata, joining me today. David and I love these conversations, so what we thought we would do today is give you a little recap. David and I both attended the Nelson Nash Institute last week, and again, depends on when the recording comes out, but part of February, we went on to the Nelson Nash Institute. There's some really interesting takeaways that I wanted to share with the listeners and people that are watching this on YouTube. And so today we're going to kind of go through some of the key takeaways, some observations. It's rather interesting when we do these things that how I see them isn't always the way David sees them. So I always like to get a second perspective. And that's really helpful because, again, I think it all depends on where you're at in the stream of life, and you're never standing in that same stream twice. And so it's helpful even from what last year, where my mind was at and where my thought was at compared to this year. So it just is really helpful to kind of go back. I love the ability with the podcast and be able to just recap these things with people. And again, what you can take of it, there's a lot of stuff we'll throw out there. Maybe it doesn't apply to you, maybe it does. But just think about how you can use some of the knowledge and understanding that we're trying to bring back to you in your lives. I would encourage you to always like and share our podcast. I don't really probably ask for this a lot in our podcast, but I just have the understanding that, in order for people to hear our message and hear kind of what we're talking about, if you like it, obviously if you're listening to it, you like some of the content, you like what you're hearing, we ask that you share it and grow our community, because that's how we find strength in what we're doing. So I would ask that you share this, you like it, and do all the other things you're supposed to do on podcast. And here again, I'm not the technical guy, but I am the guy that is passionate about sharing this message. Really about growing myself, growing our team, and David's big part of that team, and really part of our community, which is all of you that are listening, and all of you that are listening that might take some action. So we ask that you find us, go and find me. Wade Borth, Age Wealth Strategy is a website that I use. It's powered by Factum. It's part of our Factum family. And we just ask that you connect with us and see if there's a way that we can help you, empower you to take control of the financing in your life. Or if you're running a practice similar to ours, reach out to us, and we'd love to see if there's something we can do to help build you up, because I believe that a stronger community of all of us practitioners are going to be helpful for everyone. So with that bit of commercial, David, thank you for joining me and welcome.
As always, Wade, a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I always enjoy our conversation, and I'm excited to talk about today the experience we had last weekend. I think it will be a fair starting point to orient the members of your community that may not be aware or familiar with this institute. The Nelson Nash Institute was created to protect the legacy of Mr. R. Nelson Nash, the creator of the infinite banking concept. We had, I think, 250 life insurance professionals and IBC practitioners get together in Birmingham, Alabama, to share philosophy, Austrian economics, best practices, what's working in our businesses, how are we serving our community and our clients. And we are charged with being the leaders today to move forward that legacy Nelson created and to bring it to more families, more business owners moving forward with our own individual businesses. By the way, we had the pleasure and the opportunity, the privilege to be a sponsor organization at the event. Factum Financial was one of the sponsors, in addition to other 5 large mutual life insurance companies and a couple other agencies that are also leading the charge in this effort.
Yeah, that's a good point. We saw the opportunity to help sponsor and to further the message. And really what we were sponsoring, what we were trying to do is grow our community of people hearing our message and finding a way to how we fit in and reaching out to those practitioners that are looking for a place to fit in and a community to share ideas and to grow, because it's, growth and an expansion of our minds doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens in a community. And so we really wanted to promote the community aspect of it, because it serves everyone. It serves, everyone that's on the call or on the podcast or listening. It's beneficial to everyone that we kind of come together with like minds, not identical minds, but like thought processes and what we think. Because that's one thing I found. Everybody kind of has a little bit different thoughts about how this should work and what this should look like, which I find refreshing, because it isn't a groupthink exercise. It is like, oh, interesting. That's do it. That's great. This is how we do it, and we can learn and grow from that. It's not an echo chamber.
Yeah. So wait, it's called the think tank. It's what the event is called for what you're describing, right? We all want to preserve the principles, the rules, the things that Nelson early on identified that are critical to do this properly, using the use of properly designed dividend paying whole life insurance with a mutual carrier, right? This is very important to the product that we select to perform the process of infinite banking, which at the end of the day is how we take over the financing and the banking function in our life, which it also is called infinite because it comes with a mindset and also needs to be particularly curated for your and my life and what's important to us to finance. And I think when you put all that together and you realize, hey, this is not just a product, it's the combination of a process and a mindset, some ideas. We preserve Nelson's principles, but then we also have to apply it to our real lives in alignment with our lives. And it's just fascinating to see and hear so many perspectives, so many applications. And another piece that I think is important to discuss here, in that room, yes, there's 250 professionals in the space, right? We are all life insurance licensed. Many of us are practitioners going by the practitioner program that the Institute puts together. But the conversation truly has two areas of focus. One part of the conversation from stage on the conversation with the audience members, table discussions, and in the hallways is, let's talk about what's happening in our practices, what's working well, what are the techniques, technical conversations, what is our marketing strategy, how are we spending time? And it's very useful for professionals to come and learn from other people that have been in the industry 10 years and more. And particularly for those that have found ways to promote themselves very effectively and create a community to serve. And then the other part of the conversation in that room, Wade, is what are the particular concepts, ideas, strategies that are working well with the consumer so we can all become more effective in sharing these ideas and developing a relationship with people that want to create that control over their banking function through the infinite banking concept.
That's a really good distinction of the two different paths that were there and being discussed. I think it actually worked out well. Always works well because, again, what we see as practitioners from stage or in the hallway are talking about one or two things like how I'm looking for a process, or I'm looking for a community, or I'm looking for a way to do this better. That's, and I'm just kind of paraphrasing what you say, but and the other side of that is, what are the questions that our clients are having, and how are we addressing those questions in an effective manner? Because I think at the end of the day, it really comes down to bringing some clarity to what clients want, bringing some clarity to what the pain is. You and I've talked about this multiple times. We've talked about this on the podcast before. We have the tough money curriculum that we walk people through, and we help them identify what that pain is and why they're having sleepless nights. Is typically it comes down because you don't have enough liquidity, and we'll talk about that, and you can go back to the previous podcast. But that liquidity, if you address the liquidity, if we have enough money in our control, again, because we save money, we put money aside, and we put it in our control, then it allows us to do what Nelson would call banking, which is that idea of it's not the noun of banking, it's the verb of banking. That when we use money and we use it with respect, and we treat it as one of the most valuable assets or the most valuable asset that we have, that's the verb of banking. And that only happens when you have reserves and you have capital and dollars to be able to do it. So it's really addressing the how to and really a lot of the why as well as the how to.
Yeah. Let me put a thought in front of you, and I want to hear your reaction to this, because I have a couple of highlights of things that were the most significant patterns I could pick up there. And I want to hear how you think about this. And by the way, I have to say this before I go down this rabbit hole, right? Wade was recognized as one of the practitioners during the ceremonies that has been a consistent staple on building this community as a practitioner. You were recognized after 18 or 19 years of being part of this community.
19 years, yeah.
With a ceremonial 15-year pin or more. So you're a year away from making your 20th year, which is a great distinction. Only one person was recognized at that level. So I thought it was fantastic. I was really proud to see you there at the top of the list and get up there and be recognized. You not only have been a part of that community for a long time. Yes.
How's that? That's my Nelson Nash hat. They awarded you a green hat if you're after 10 years. So
I love it. But I was just saying, you've been a staple certainly of that community, an OG, like I called you all the time. But I think an important thing that people should hear from a different voice than yours is the fact that you truly have taken what you've learned in those rooms and from Nelson directly and impacted many other agents, many other families, many lives, including mine, to continue to preserve that message, to continue to preserve the implementation of this principle. So congratulations, by the way, well-deserved recognition, in my opinion.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate it a bunch. It's, sometimes we don't realize the distance we've gone ourselves, so it's helpful for other people to kind of reflect that back. So it was nice just in the room, like, because sometimes you just get and you do, and you like don't look up, and you're just working away, and then you look back and like, holy smokes, it's almost 20 years. So thank you. I appreciate that.
No, we would be remiss if we don't said that. So, okay, let me give you a thought. And keep in mind, this is a newer member of the community having some observations and reflections that to you may be obvious, but I want to hear how you think about it from that perspective, from your experience. So ad factum, we have a framework we've recognized from the professional side of the room, right? For all these people that are practitioners of the concept in life insurance professionals, there are 3 key areas that explain sources of pain in their business.
Right.
And we label those, hey, you either are experiencing a feeling of loneliness and you feel lost and you're lacking community to build with. Yeah. Another piece here is, I don't have the systems or the tools and I don't know what to do next. I don't know what develops relationships. I don't know how to educate people. And we call that lack of systems and processes, which is another key area of our business and how we teach other agents that come to join our business how to develop. And then the third piece, which you are the leader of, is I have no guidance to do. I don't know how to do this. When I have a tough questions, I don't know who to call. And it's our coaching and training piece of it. And all these 3 areas come together with the resources we provide to our agents for you to, at the top, become the leader of that organization, the CEO, the owner of that business. And that pattern is very easy to identify talking to another agent, because they will just mention those 3 pains. I'm lonely, I don't know what to do, and I don't have guidance, or I don't have the processes to keep track of this business. And building that puts them in a whole different level, right? So absolutely. I observed that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You observed. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Bro, I want to make sure I gave you space. So I observed that for the agent. But then from stage, there were other conversations about what's working with clients and in the client interaction. And the themes that came up mirror that same set of problems. Clients, families, business owners have 3 issues that are constantly coming up. I am lonely in this world. I don't know anyone else doing infinite banking or using life insurance. I need a community to learn with and to learn from and to build alongside with. I thought that was really interesting. The second one, I don't know how to track my policies. I don't know how to track the growth of my cash values or my loans. I don't have a system. I don't have a process to manage my family banking system through IBC. Very interesting. And the third, and you know where I'm going with this, I feel like there's no guidance. An agent sold me a policy. I don't know what to do. I'm in year 3. Do I borrow money? Do I put more PU? And it's fascinating to me, like we talk in infinite banking, the business owner, the family, the individual, they all have the same problem. We finance everything in life. Zooming out in this NNI think tank, a theme that came up to me is the same business owner problems we've identified to support them into leadership are the same or similar issues that the individuals in families and businesses, leaders at the consumer level have when they want to be the leaders at home, but they don't have a community, they don't have a processing system, and they don't have the proper guidance. And what a blessing that it is for us to be in a position to provide those to our community of consumers and our community of agents. What do you think? Am I missing the boat there?
Absolutely not. It was interesting from the stage of the conversations, right? Everybody's like, what is your system? What is your process to help your clients or to empower your client? That's how we look at it. How do we empower our clients? But you take it back down to the human behavior. In Nelson's book, he addresses the human behavior as really was the obstacle we have to overcome to running this business called, I call it the Borth Family Bank, or you might call it the Zapata Family Bank, whatever it is, like this business. But it's the human behavior that we have to deal with. So it doesn't matter if you have a room full of an insurance professional, if you have a room full of whatever they're doing, widget makers, small business owners, individuals that are employees. We all have to address the human equation, right? That's the whole thing. So it doesn't matter what business we're in. We still We want community. We want, how do we do this on a consistent, regular basis so I don't have to kind of recreate it each and every time? Or who can help me? Because we all need coaching. If we don't need it, then you go back to what Nelson talks about as the arrival syndrome. So I just don't think it's hard to separate the professionals, the people that are trying to run their business in the room, and the clients they're trying to serve, because quite frankly, they're one and the same from the human perspective. Now, the details of what they're trying to do is different, but the big picture is like you do need a process. If you're going to do something and do it well, don't recreate it each and every time. Ask, if you're a consumer of IBC or you own a policy, don't know what to do with it, find somebody. Find us on the, go to Fact and Financial, look at our educational material, the stuff that we do. We have a deep dive. We just had one this week. We do those once a month. We do a foundation presentation on IBC once a month. You go to the factandfinancial.com, look there, and in there we have a list of all those events that we're putting on, because again, it's that education, it's the awareness and the education and an ability to take action. So that's going to be for the consumer, and for the agent, it's the same thing. It's like, am I serving my client at the highest possible level because I have a good educational system? So again, it's the same thing, and I can go back down through and talk about the different, what's available, but I really see it in clients. Clients are looking for somebody to help them. They just really have to have a good coach in their corner. And if you don't have that, the gentleman on the screen, this David Zapata, is one of the greatest coaches I've ran across when it comes to really most things in life. He's a student. You gave me some praise earlier. I want to throw it back at you and say, man, I love how you see things and how you take it in and how you reframe it. And I kind of jokingly say when we're on stage together that, I help interpret what you say, but a lot of times you help interpret what I say. So I guess we serve each other in that sense. So
one is an accent, the other one is the cost of being from North Dakota. So I guess that's back and forth.
Exactly. So, but we get a joke, but this is so valuable. If they can go out and find you, if you're looking, if you're just like, man, I want to talk to somebody, contact David Zapata. We'll have all the contact information in the show notes, but it's just so helpful to talk to people because you feel lonely out there as a consumer. And this is funny because I was thinking like 20 years ago, it was over 20 years ago when I first read Nelson's book. You do feel lonely out there because you just don't know, like, am I crazy? Is this like am I the only person doing this? But when all of a sudden you start talking to other people and like, oh, yeah, you found your lost brother that you never knew you had. So it's good to find those other people as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, back to your point, I think there's just, there are certain human needs that need to be satisfied. And those are the three things that typically, how do we become great at what we do? I read a quote by Zig. It's actually my daily devotional thing that I go through in the mornings. And it says, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start in order to be great. Yeah. And so if you're looking for greatness, it's like, just get started by connecting with people. It's that awareness. Once that awareness happens, then you say, I can either choose to get educated and be really good at this, or I can choose not to. And so I think that's the point. But people that are listening to the podcast, people that are watching us, are already engaged, because if you weren't, you wouldn't be on this podcast. So I'm excited for people that are getting started down that pathway. And either, as an agent, wanting to do idea of taking control of your banking function, being in the insurance industry, let's do it at the highest level. Let's find that greatness. We can find that greatness for you. Or if you're a client listening, like, I got a policy, maybe I'm working with Wade, or maybe David working with you, or maybe they're working with somebody else, or they're not working yet. If they haven't started yet, let's get you started. And then how do we take that to the highest level? And it is a journey. It is going to be a journey. Education is never an event. That's the one thing I would say about the think tank is, like, it's just a stop along the way to recharge your batteries, to find some clarity. And that's really what that think tank did for me.
Yeah. This is, and I appreciate you sharing that insight here. I'll tell you, it is interesting to me. The theme of the think tank this year, by the way, we haven't shared this, was think long range, which is the first rule from Nelson's principles of the infinite banking concept. And by the way, we should also give a couple of shout outs. I think David Stern and Lee are doing a great job this year, continually improving the quality of the think tank. So thank you for what you're doing at the Nelson Nash Institute. Other folks were great contributors. Jeremiah Dew was the MC who did an amazing job bringing energy to the room. His brother Jonah also was part of the whole effort, and they did a fantastic job bringing Benjamin Franklin into the theme of thinking long range, which I really enjoyed. Richard Canfield was one of the other leaders promoting the connection zone. So there's a lot of leadership and quality conversation because there's great individuals in this organization. But going back to the theme, Wade, I think this idea of thinking long range contrasted with what we just talked about is really interesting. And I love that you brought it to human behaviors for the following reason. The way it made me think particularly about my practice was this. Most of us that are professionals listening to this have had this experience where you work with a client for a couple of months and they start their first policy and they get started. And you explain the premium structure and the way to overfund a policy and the way to use a policy, all these things. And 3 months later, 2 months later, you reconnect with this individual and they cannot recall anything you've talked to for months, right? In preparation for that decision. And it's always really interesting because in recognition of these problems, hey, we need to build a community. We need to have processes and systems in the guidance. It gives me empathy to recognize that our business by nature is not transactional. It's a long-term, we have to think long, it's a long-term relationship where we are willing to pour into others in building a relationship to provide the guidance, to continue to support the systems, and to provide community weight for people to become. I always point this out, and you've heard me say this a million times, and I'm sorry to repeat myself, but I think it's so important. The book where Nelson explains the infinite banking concept, the title of the book is Becoming Your Own Banker. The book has the word banker highlighted in capital letters, but I personally think the active word in that title is becoming, and becoming is a transformation process. It takes time, and it takes the things we're talking about, and it takes willingness to understand that it's a transformation of the human condition.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Dave. What do we have to become in order to, achieve that sense of freedom, that freedom of, money, time, relationship, or purpose, right? It's like, it's typically where we're going to type to, but if we were there, we wouldn't be searching. So it's like, who do we have to become? Because we have to transform ourselves each and every day. Become 1% better, 1% clearer, 1% kinder. We've talked about that in the past as well. But what is that end goal? Who do I need to become in the long run in order to be a better leader in my family, better community, my business, my relationship with money, my relationship with our religious, whatever you pray to? Like, how do I become a leader in all those areas? And it's that constant metamorphosis, it's that constant transformation. Because I've used that quote from you multiple times, like, banker is what's on the big red letters on the book, but becoming is at the very beginning. And then that, I think, I agree with you. That's the key word. And that's where a community and a coach, no matter if you're in the business of looking or if you're a client, has to be there. Who do I need to become? And having at least start getting a real clear picture of where you want to go. Because again, if you don't know what you want to become, you don't. So I think it's helpful. That's why you need a coach, and that's why you need an expert or a professional in this industry to help you. It's because if you don't know where you're going to go, that's where you're going to end up. So,
yeah. Let me ask you another question, Wade.
Yeah.
In terms of thinking long term or thinking long range, what did you hear from stage or on the hallways? What ideas, lessons stuck with you, resonated with you from your 30-year career that would be worth sharing with the audience today?
Oh, thinking long range. Obviously that was the theme of the meeting, and it really was probably. It's how I took it. Is like people are in there talking about how do I take my business and think long range, because a lot of times, especially like the newer people or maybe the people don't have a community, you think long range is 2 years. Mm-hmm. Remember, Nelson was a forester, so it was like. He thought in decades, really the life of a trees. And it was just really interesting that the people that were speaking were people that had been there probably 10 years from stage. And there's some people that were a little bit newer than that. But do we have an asset that is strong enough to go through all the trials and tribulations, that all the unknowns and all the unseens going forward. And I think that was probably one of the key indicators, like what are we doing to help clients shelter all the things in the next, not the next 12 months, 24 months, because again, that's important immediately, but again, we have to build our foundation on stone. And that stone is like, what are we doing to help people see and develop, helping them become, in your words, what they want to become over the next, not 12 months, but 12 years, 24 years, 2 decades. There's a lot of generational thought process, and like, how do we help clients get to the next generation of controlling themselves? They talk about the 10%, like they need to reach the 10% of the population in order to amass this as something that's like has that critical mass, but you don't do that on short-term plans. You have to have a long-term plan to make it happen. So I think there's a couple of things that I would say kind of we're reaching to that, thinking long-term. And a lot of the conversations were wrapped around that, but I think that's the ultimate that we could see. I could see people were getting to is like, how do we empower people to not just make this a, hey, let's get in and let's do this. Let's get a policy and start, easy in 1 or 2 or 3 years, which may be important, but what is the long-term objective? And there was a guy that talked about people losing sight of what's really important. It's like our ability to grow. And I call it, have we empowered our clients to think for success over the long run? I really believe in humanity. I believe in, you and I, we don't plan to fail. Quite frankly, and if we were planning to fail, that'd be a pretty miserable life. We plan like, what are we going to do to succeed? What are we going to do to be better in our lives? And better doesn't necessarily mean 1-year-old, 2-year-old, but how do I make, my son's life more impactful than, or at least bring some clarity to what that could be now and really 20 or 30 years. How do you set up your family, your kids, and also maybe your grandkids to where they can start taking control of that function in their lives so they're not beholding to an entity that will ultimately want to control them, if it's government, if it's banking, or whatever it might be. So from that standpoint, that's what I got from the stage, was just that theme of how do we empower people to think long range.
Yeah. You're also making me think of one more thing here, which is, and it's aligned with our values, the 5 areas of life, which somebody from stage said something in the lines of, just keep in mind that for most consumers, the goal is not to do infinite banking. Infinite banking is the bridge to their goals. And I thought that was very insightful, because for people like you and I that are very passionate about this, we wake up, we think about this, we go to bed thinking about this, right? This is an important passion. It's, it's a way we express value to our community, is how we satisfy our need for learning, right? There's a different connection to it. But that perspective helped me zoom out in recognition that when thinking long term, I need to remember as a consumer and as a professional that at the end of the day, this process, this mindset, these products as a concept are just a bridge for people to have more abundance in their personal life, in their spiritual life, with their family, a healthier relationship with money, an ability to serve their community in their occupation. And the conversation, particularly with consumers, I think needs to be around what truly do you want? A question that was asked that I think is a very popular question for many books is, thinking 3 years from now and looking back, what would you have to see differently in your life, maybe in your financial world, for you to feel like you've made progress? That connection of what visually feels like and looks like, and you can tangibly see in your life that has improved because you've implemented this strategy, is the conversation at the end of the day, is the actual outcome. And thinking long range about that is what probably addresses the noise that we have short term in questions and the mechanics and all these things that we think that are important, which are important, by the way. Yeah. When you recognize that getting there with more certainty, that having control is the name of the game, is probably a more effective way to lead in conversation with clients. And I think for you and I, in conversation on how do we impact all those professionals around us in our business.
Yeah, that's really the point, is like anything else, sometimes we focus on the tool versus the big picture, right? Yeah. And I use the analogy all the time, is like my whole life policy or infinite banking, or really just, I want to build a house, right? If that's my objective, what tools do I need? That's important. But where do I find mastery in order to either build it or have somebody help me build it? Yeah. I think that's the real key. And then once you understand how to get that picture of what you want to build, you got the blueprints of your life that I love, if you and I are sitting on a park bench 3 years from now, what does success look like to you? And it's helping people start to imagine what that might look like. Because I don't know that a lot of people even ask that question. They want to get in the technical. Let's talk about all the technical pieces of this. And they're talking about what kind of saw blade are you using on that Makita circular saw, or what volt. They're really focused on the wrong thing, when the thing they should be focused on is like, how do I build that dream that I want to live?
Yeah.
So guys, it's a great point to bring up, is like, thinking long term is thinking about what this life might look like, and not that, which is important, than not focusing so much on the tool itself. And although the tool is important because we need that, and we have to have an understanding what it can do and what it can't do, is very important. But again, I think that's the part where people focus on way too much. It's all the small mechanical parts of it, versus thinking, how does this support me, and how does this help me get to where I want to go?
Yeah, no. I think overall it was a great experience at the think tank this year. I was very refreshed. I didn't get a chance to go last year, but I was refreshed to see the community, to see new ideas, to see new speakers on stage sharing from the most technical conversations about, premium structure and policy structure, which you and I love geeking out to.
Yep.
To, hey, client conversations and the psychology and how do we help people find their problem, verbalize it, and come to terms with what they truly want to do. And it's really productive. A lot of great connections. A big Hispanic community attending this year. A lot of people from different parts of the country that are teaching the infinite banking concept in Spanish, which was kind of interesting. I've never seen that before. So yeah, very grateful that I got the chance to attend and share with you, and a lot of good notes and lessons brought back to my business.
Yeah, I did have to, again, jokingly, I always say I have to help interpret you. And then you sit with this group of Spanish-speaking individuals, and I listen, I'm like, man, if I go there, he has to interpret for me so I can kind of get a little flavor with. Yeah, let me ask you, what's that?
One of those few opportunities where I get to translate for you.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what's the beauty of having you and I working on a team together, is like, we always have a chance to serve each other in different ways. And we think about that as like, it's fun to have people around that can support us. And I guess that was one of the big things I've always enjoyed about having our team together. And when we had a good portion of our Factum team down there, I believe there was 9 of us in the group, and so there was a good representation. It wasn't all of them by any stretch of the imagination, but it was a good representation of our organization. So I was happy to see that many people were down there embracing this idea and supporting really the gentleman and the concept that kind of changed my trajectory of my life. So I was very excited about that. So
yeah,
I would ask you one question, and I think about this, is like, what was the one thing you shared with Sarah? For the listeners, that's David's wife, by the way. Yep. What did you share with Sarah when you got home? What was the one thing, like, oh man, I was so glad I went because of X? What was X? I know that's kind of putting you on the spot, but that to me is always the biggest takeaway what do I share with my wife?
No, I know the answer immediately. I told you this, leaving the city, leaving Birmingham, and I left with deep gratitude. When I go to these industry events, it's a great opportunity for me to contrast my personal growth in the last several years in the industry, and also the growth of our organization, our frameworks, our processes and systems, our community, our coaching and training, right? And I go there and I have deep appreciation for the contrast. The first time I attended that think tank was very intimidating. A lot of bright minds, a lot of conversation that I didn't have in me, that I didn't understand. I was just a consumer, by the way. I attended as a client, not as a professional in the industry the first time I attended. And a lot of the conversation from stage was over my head, just not familiar with Austrian economics and not familiar with a lot of the private banking concepts that we teach. And to fast forward to this year and see, oh no, I am certainly a professional in this room, and I'm having a lot of the conversations that these OGs are having. And so it was a good moment to build confidence that I just need to continue to move forward, continue to learn. I also saw a lot of progress. I told Sarah, man, we've come a long way as an organization. We have very strong frameworks. There a lot of clarity about how we describe the concept, how we educate, how we provide community. The human behavior aspect of it through the Tough Money curriculum, I think, is something that we've brought to this community. I think is going to continue to grow just because we've, created a lot of tools that are very helpful for the consumer to get very clear about their money and decide whether private banking is an avenue they want to continue moving forward with. So I told Sarah, I was glad that I was there to confirm that I'm in the right path. And also on the opposite side of that, because I like to be fair, just clearly a lot to learn for me. So we saw from stage people that have been in the business 10, 16, 20 years saying some very insightful things. A couple of things that stick for me that I told Sarah, the use of my time will change over the progress of my career, right? Like I'm in a building phase of my business, if you may. I spend a lot of time building tools, building processes, right? And then there's other folks down the road completely focused on serving new clients, marketing. And that was very insightful to have a framework to think about that over time. And the one thing that probably I told Sarah the first, and I'll say this last, was a conversation from stage on how others have a discovery process or an initial conversation with people that is all centered about the client, the consumer, and understanding what they want, what is preventing them from having what they want, identifying that control is important to them and how important it is, how urgent it is. And the sequence of the questions and the sequence of the conversation was very insightful, particularly because it's someone that has tested this 5,000 times or a significant amount of times. And it gave me a little bit of a humble pill to say, you know what, in my process personally, when I interact with someone, I have more room to grow and learn on how to be a better leader in those conversations, ask more questions, take more pauses, be comfortable with silence, and not fill the room with what I know, but instead of fill the conversation with what I want to find out through curiosity. So it was a great reminder for me to go back to that conversation on empathy and wanting to connect.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I would probably agree with you along that same lines. One thing I've always appreciated about you is like your ability to create tools or at least thoughts and take thoughts and put them on paper or put them on a white deck and say, here's how we can help you get there. It's simple tools, just the simplest things. Like I love, you talked about tough money. We've talked about this in the past too, is like that ability to see like how much money do I have in something that, isn't going to, can I burn through it and get to, but just your ability to help like visualize that. Cause I think that's one thing I took from stage as well, is like helping just a client to visualize what it looks like. Because we can have feelings, but how do we visualize it? How do we put it in a form that we say, that's the picture I'm trying to draw? I think I heard that from stage a couple of times, like help them draw that mental picture of where they want to get to. And I part of going back to that question I just asked you, one of the things I took away from was like, I kind of went there. I've always approached these, not always, probably the last 10, 15 years, I've tried to approach all these industry events like, what's the one big thing I want to come away with? Find that one thing or that two things. Because if you go there and you don't have a purpose, like just like life, if you don't have a purpose, you go there and go, hey, that was really great. And it doesn't impact your life whatsoever. But I was trying to find the one or two things. I wanted to kind of confirm what our process would, am I headed down the right road? Am I doing a good job and what I'm trying to do and help empower agents, empower clients, do these, do what they want to do. But I was listening to the language up there, and it confirmed that we have a very good system and a process, so that made me feel good. And not that I was looking to be validated, but I want to compare to the industry, contrast it to the industry, contrast it to those that are successful on the stage. And I was like, I also found with a lot of humility, is like, I have a lot of room to grow. There's areas that we can get much better at. But I think that's part of the human nature, is like we can't do all things at once. We can do anything we want, but we just can't do it all. Yeah. I think that's how the quote goes. But the story was like, I look at it and I'm like, there's some really good pieces that I took immediately and put it into action. It's like, we're going to change a couple of things of what we do just by what I'm hearing. And so some of those key takeaways were huge. And those little things are what are really going to make the difference in our lives. Because it's that unknown and that unseen until you're ready to receive that message that can take you now to the next level. So I'm excited about implementing some of those changes that we heard people talking about from stage, either with client relations or with agent relations. So,
yeah, I'll throw a teaser here, and I'm sure in a few months we're going to have this conversation again, and I'm self-inviting myself to your podcast again, by the way. But
anytime you got something to say, bring it on.
I don't know if you've shared, I don't think you've shared in a recent episode, we're working on a new framework for our upcoming industry mastermind connecting some new ideas that have come to our world of how do people develop awareness on where are they in the wealth building or abundance building, however you relate to that expression, right? Like understanding where you are relative to others and where you are in different levels of the game, if you want to call it that, is really helpful to understand what are the things that should already be implemented at this stage and what are the things that come next for us to create a sense of progression, not just to the infinite banking concept of for life, but in general with your relationship with money. And I think when we launched this new framework, a lot of the things we're talking about in terms of processes and tools, systems, community, and more importantly, this idea you and I are discussing, the ability to recognize there are things that we draw confidence from because we have implemented very well. And the fact that there's also a gap to continue to get better and never having a rival syndrome, it's the way to look at most things in life. I need to understand where I am so I can look back and I can look forward and I can continue to have purpose in what I do every day, growing every day, 1% better every day. I think this realization, and obviously, we are very aligned, the two of us. So the fact that we identified that as the thing for us individually in there reflects back on the things that we're going to be talking about in the coming months with new frameworks and new ideas to help our community.
Yeah, and we think about that, and I agree with. Glad you brought that up because it's really important. Sometimes we don't see patterns, we don't see sequence early enough, and it's like, are we doing activities? Are we doing things that are really irrelevant to us right now that would be relevant 2 years from now? And then it brings frustration because we're not getting the results we want, and then we're like, that's never going to work. Well, maybe it's just because it wasn't the right timing or the right sequence. And so it's been our focus on sequence of how things need to happen. It's just like the path of money has to have the proper sequence if you want the results you're looking for. And so I think what we're talking about is, are you in a position, first it's identifying, right? We go back to our basic, first it becomes awareness. We have to identify where we're at, where we want to get to, and then what are the tools we need to implement to make it happen. I think that's probably the biggest thing. But if we don't, how many times has people in the industry or in the financial services world, which is way bigger than our industry, just plops you into a product, and like, how does that serve you if you're not ready for it, or if you're beyond what that's going to do? And so I think it's more of a thoughtful process. I guess maybe at the end of the day, that's what I'm excited about. Is like we're getting a lot more dialed into where you're at, what tools are going to take you to that next level, versus throwing the tools out there and hoping that you're in the position that you can actually use them. So I'm excited about where it's going. So.
Well, it came full circle today. And we started identifying, hey, our professionals in our consumer and our clients, our community have the same issues. They want to not feel alone. They want a community. They want process and systems, and they want the proper guidance through a coach. And the reason, again, to go to these events is to see that for ourselves. Hey, I've needed these things and I've implemented. Some of those things are all still needed and I need to create growth through them. And we bring that to our practice and we create frameworks to guide our community through what you're talking about. Hey, what if we were able to provide you with the guidance and the ability to see patterns, to recognize things that are appropriate already in this world, things that are coming but maybe are a little distant and we need to put. I work with so many clients that love to discuss hours in research on revocable versus irrevocable XYZ trusts when they have not tracked their net worth or their profit and loss statements for a couple of months, And it's finding the appropriate moves in the right game of chess at the right time to win.
Yeah. That's a really good way to kind of wrap this all up. Is like, I'm going to take it back to a fabulous, outstanding movie I'm sure you've never seen. It's called Blazing Saddles. When they ask Mongo, what do you know about X? And he says, I know nothing. I'm just a pawn in the chess game of life. Well, we want to make you not so much a pawn in the chess game of life. We want you to be the chess master. Like, it's your life. We just empower you to take control. So I think that was a good analogy, bringing it all back together. And really, that would be the recap from, like, what are we doing to empower each other? What are we doing to empower our clients to be, finding out what they want? How do they become that? Going back to what's about becoming. So I appreciate you bringing that full circle and bringing the chess reference in, because it is valuable to kind of think about, who do I need to become to get what I want? and to get what I want for my family and for future generations, and to have that abundance in all 5 areas. So thank you so much, David. I appreciate your time.
I appreciate you. Thank you, Wade.
All right, man. Take care. Thanks so much.
Grateful to have you tune in today. If you're ready to rethink your financial journey and take the next step, make sure to subscribe. Until next time, stay curious and stay in control.